Hey teachers! So if you have followed me for any length of time, you know that one thing I'm super passionate about is making history hands-on and fun for students. There is this misconception in the teaching world that history is boring and that it can only be taught using passages and questions, but there's so many exciting things that you can do, especially when it comes to westward expansion. So today we are going to be looking at all kinds of fun activities that you can use when you're teaching your westward expansion unit. Now, westward expansion includes a lot of topics. It includes things like the Louisiana Purchase, the Lewis and Clark expedition, the addition of new states, the gold rush, the Oregon Trail. There's so many things, and with each of those things comes exciting activities that you can do with your students. So let's go ahead and dive into those right now. Now, no matter what unit you are teaching, one thing I always tell teachers who are teaching social studies or teaching histories is ditch the textbooks. Students do not like them. As soon as they see them, they automatically get that, I don't want to do this feeling. But with history, it's still important that students understand and comprehend the information. So what I've done is I have replaced westward expansion textbooks with just short passages to teach students what they need to know, and then they dive deeper into each topic using hands-on activities. Now, sometimes I present the passages as PDFs where they can do everything using pen and paper. Other times I present the passages digitally, but the important thing is you're sharing the important concepts that students need to know before they start digging deeper into them. Now, I have often been very short on time to teach history, where they only give me a very limited amount of time during the day to teach it. And if this is the case for you, what you can do is send the passages home for homework or use them as part of your ELA instruction, so that way when students come to history class, they are ready to dive into those hands-on activities. Now let's talk about a fun activity that you can use with the Louisiana Purchase. What I like to do is divide my students into 2 or more groups, and I have each group debate the pros and the cons of purchasing the Louisiana territory, because there were both at the time. And then after each group has had time to debate it, I have the students debate it as a class, and if students decide that the Louisiana Purchase is worth it, I have them fill out these $15 million checks to represent the purchase. After the Louisiana Purchase comes the Lewis and Clark expedition, and there's a lot of aspects to this expedition, but one thing that I find most interesting, and I find that students really enjoy too, is all of the discoveries that Lewis and Clark made. They actually discovered hundreds and hundreds of new plant and animal species during the expedition, and they documented those. So what I like to do is have students create their own Lewis and Clark expedition journals, and then have them research their discoveries and create journal entries and draw pictures and document everything that or not everything, because that's a lot of things, but a lot of the stuff that Lewis and Clark discovered. Any westward expansion unit is also going to cover manifest destiny at some point. This idea that the United States was meant to span North America from coast to coast. And so one way I like to do this is by incorporating some ELA and inferencing skills. And what I do is I have these task cards with different scenarios about manifest destiny and westward expansion. A lot of these are cause and effect scenarios, and students have to use inference skills to determine what the best course of action is or what they would do in those different scenarios. So that is one way that you can incorporate ELA skills into your westward expansion unit, but I've also got a way that you can incorporate math skills into your westward expansion unit. You can have students look up the dates when each state was added to the Union and create a chart with that information. And then you can also have them practice graphing skills as well. They can graph the years when states were added. They could graph free states versus slave states, but there's a lot of charting and graphing activities that you can do just by looking at when the states were added to the Union. Okay, so this next one is one of my very favorite westward expansion activities, and that is my Oregon Trail board game. Now, if you are in your 30s like me, you probably remember playing the Oregon Trail computer game when you were a kid. I could seriously sit and play that computer game for hours. I don't know if I ever actually got my family to travel the entire length of the Oregon Trail. I think they always drowned or caught a disease or something before we made it there. But I could play that game for hours as a kid. And so I wanted to find a way to recreate something similar in my classroom. And so I created this board game, and students really seem to love it. They're trying to travel the Oregon Trail, and along the way they've got to keep a food log, and they've got to go hunt for food to make sure that they have enough to eat along the way. They're also they're experiencing challenging encounters like crossing rivers and different things that the families in the computer game experienced as well. So this is kind of my way to take the computer game and make it a board game for kids. Now, if you're a teacher who likes to do classroom transformations, which can be a lot of fun and engaging for kids when you're teaching history, a Gold Rush classroom transformation can be a lot of fun, and you can set up a mining camp in your classroom, and you can also set up areas where students can pan for gold. If I do this classroom transformation, what I like to do is I like to send kids to go pan for gold at different periods of time. So I'll send one group to go, and then after 10 minutes or so, I'll send another group. And the reason I do this is to show that when the gold rush was happening, the only people that really got rich off the gold rush were the first people to arrive. Even though thousands and thousands of people came later, most of those people didn't get rich because the gold had already been discovered. And so this is one really fun way that you can illustrate this in your classroom. It's important when teaching any social studies unit to look for ways to integrate map skills, and there are tons of opportunities to do that in this unit. You can do map skills with the Louisiana Territory and the Louisiana Purchase, the Lewis and Clark Expedition, or the Oregon Trail, just to name a few. Now, any great social studies unit has got to have some great review activities to help your students review for their unit test and state testing at the end of the year. And there are two types of review activities I like to use with all of my social studies units. The first one is task cards, and it's because it's a great way to get students up and moving. It's a great way to introduce them to questions the way that they'll see them on standardized testing, and students really seem to enjoy task cards. There are literally so many task card games you can play, so you don't have to use them the exact same way for every single unit. And I've actually created a video where I've shared some of my favorite games and activities that you can play with task cards, so make sure you check that out for lots of ideas. And then my other favorite review activity, I have to use this as part of all of my social studies units, is an escape room activity. And this is where students travel back in time to learn about westward expansion, and they have all of these activities and challenges to help them review westward expansion, and they have to complete them within a certain amount of time or they will not be able to return to the present. So this is something that is not only a great review activity, but the students completely buy into it and they really love it. So there you have it. Those are just a few of my favorite activities for teaching westward expansion. But I would love to hear from you. Do you have any fun activities for teaching westward expansion that I didn't cover in today's video? Make sure to leave a comment below and let me know. And if you're thinking, wow, these activities sound like a lot of fun, but I don't have time to make them and reproduce them in my classroom, I've got you covered. In the description of this video, there's a link to my Teachers Pay Teachers store, and you can find my complete westward expansion unit, westward expansion passages and questions, task cards, and an escape room. So I've got lots of resources for you if you don't have the time to make them yourself. And last but not least, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel so that way you don't miss out on any of my teaching tips or ideas. Until next time, happy teaching!